What's up, my wizards? It's Dev. From Mtg, we like magic, and standard rotation is right around the bend. There's actually less than 6 weeks now in the current standard, so the time has come to decide what we're going to do with all of our old, soon-to-be irrelevant standard cards. We trade them away while we still can, sell them while they still have some value, use them as scrap for proxies, maybe gift them to people we know that are just learning how to play magic. There are a lot of relevant things to do with your old cards, but rule of thumb, as soon as you get rid of some of your old cards, they're going to skyrocket in value once the availability goes down. And it can be tough to predict what cards are going to do that, but that's why you got me today, And truth be told, I am no financial expert. No one on YouTube is. I'm just one of the only ones that's going to actually tell you that. So take everything with a grain of salt, but I have been playing the game for over 20 years at this point, and I've seen many a standard rotation come and go. So I like to think I know what to look for, and today we're going to try and help you out. We're going to look at the top 15 cards you should hold on to. Now, to kick the list off, because you know how I like to do things around here, I got an honorable mention that I want to talk about for a second, but I want to preface it by saying that one of the reasons that cards tend to shoot up in value a couple of years after they rotate out is that something comes along that breaks them. You could say that, literally, about any card that's rotating out of standard at any given time. Even the worst card, you could say, well, something could break it. And I understand that counterpoint to the argument here. But all that being said, Shadow of the Grave looks more eminently breakable than like 90% of the stuff that's rotating out of standard. Now read the entire card here and you'll realize that not only, of course, does this let you get back the stuff you've cycled that turn, but also everything you've discarded that turn at a cost of just 2 mana, which is actually really, really low. So a free discard outlet that packs enough value to break this could come out anywhere down the road. And at that point, 2 mana to get back everything you've discarded that turn for crazy value looks really, really good. So again, the card looks eminently breakable if we see the right free discard outlet come out. But let's get into the actual list here. Number 15, to start things off, Metallica Mimic. Now, this actually wasn't on my list for a good long time, and then I realized, yeah, it should probably be on here. First of all, casual players just love this card, which is another factor in determining whether a card's going to hold value or go up in value after rotation. Again, this card will be almost completely unavailable just a few months after it rotates out. People will have sold it or traded it away. It just won't matter near as much to all the people who are building tribal decks in standard, which will still be a thing, but there are going to be multitudes, this huge crowd of casual players that'll still love Metallic Mimic. It goes in literally any tribal deck, and tribal decks are some of the most popular decks in casual Magic. Not to mention EDH. It's not like, Commander doesn't have tribal decks as a format. It's got lots and lots of them too, and this can go into literally any tribal commander deck. So I could imagine that Metallic Mimic will retain a lot of its value for a good long time, and it belongs on the list. Now, my number 14 is Inspiring Statuary, and this is another one of those cards, it's kind of like Shadow of the Grave, to where nothing's broken it in Modern or Legacy yet, but this is a very, very breakable ability, especially in older formats, one would imagine, where you've got way more, cheap artifacts to choose from to help you improvise bigger stuff into play. So just because Inspiring Statuary hasn't been broken in Modern or Legacy yet, and it only really just got broken in Standard. But again, just because it's leaving Standard doesn't mean that its relevance is completely over. This is a decent EDH or Commander card, depending on how many artifacts you built in your deck. But I'll say one more time that an effect like this is extremely breakable. Given the right pieces in a format like Modern or Legacy, those pieces could come along any day now. Now, my number 13 is As Foretold, because this has the benefit of already being a Modern deck, like the centerpiece of a Modern deck. Now, it's a Modern deck that isn't getting a lot of traction lately, but last year, it was sort of a flash-in-the-pan, glass cannon concept that people assumed would be gamed around, and that it would just be kicked out of the format through sideboarding, effectively. And for a couple of months it was there, but nobody sideboards for As Foretold anymore, I don't think people really sideboarded for it for that long. It was only in the format for a few weeks, which means it could come back at any time and be a playable Modern deck that still casts Ancestral Visions for absolutely free. That is a broken thing to be able to do. It actually breaks a card that's already reasonably broken just by itself. And again, future cards could come along and break this even further. Now, I'm not going to make the future cards argument too much in this video. I'll do it a couple more times, but I think it's kind of hacky, because again, you can say that about literally any card, but As Foretold has the benefit of already being a playable Modern deck that only could become more playable in the future. Now, my number 12 is SRAM, one of only 2 legendary creatures on the entire list, which is kind of weird because one of the reasons that especially legendary creatures tend to shoot up in value after they become less available is because Commander is maybe the most popular format in all of Magic, all things considered. You know, we're counting casual players in this, obviously, because they make up like 70% of the player base. A lot of them play EDH, where this is actually a really, really good Commander that's fun to build around, whether you're building auras or equipments, or auras and equipments, you know, or vehicles for that matter. Stick a couple of vehicles in your deck and SRAM becomes a little bit better. So this is super fun to build around in Commander, where you can cast it 2 or 3 times at a reasonable cost. And even in formats like Modern or Legacy, this kind of like, you know, card draw is really, really good, depending on what deck you're playing. So it could become a force in those categories, but I'm mostly interested in its EDH applications, because this is a really, really cool general to build around, and it will probably never be reprinted again outside of maybe a Masters set. So I'd keep my eye on it and keep it in my trade binder. But just barely out of the top 10, my number 11 is Heroic Intervention. Now, if you didn't know, this card is already $6.50 on TCG Player, which is relatively high for what this is, you know. It doesn't really see too much play in Standard. It saw some sparing sideboard play over the course of its life in Standard, but for the most part, this is a beloved casual card. Casual players love this thing. EDH players love this thing, whether it's just in their green Elves deck, their creature-based deck, or they're going to stick it on an Isochron Scepter and be like, good game, bro. I don't know what you're going to do about that. So EDH players love this card too, and it's in some number of modern sideboards. I've already mentioned Elves in EDH, but a lot of modern Elves decks will carry this in the sideboard as well. And you know, a lot of decks that play green in Modern, and there's a fair amount of decks that play green in Modern because of Collected Company, some other cards. But needless to say, this has filled its niche in a lot of formats other than Standard, and that's why it's so expensive right now. So just imagine what it's going to do when you can't open it up from a pack from your local game store anymore. You know, when this leaves the format, it's still going to be a popular card with a lot of players and a lot of different kinds of players. So I wouldn't get rid of this anytime soon. Now we're in the top 10, and you may notice a trend here with Mirage Mirror. This is yet another card that EDH and casual players love, but those are the cards that tend to go up in value, from what I can tell, after they rotate out of Standard, you know. Cards that casual and EDH players love but are difficult to find always go way up in value. Mirage Mirror is probably going to be one of those cards, and for all we know, this could be the next Thespian Stage. You know, when Stage was in Standard, no one cared. But, you know, later on in life, Stage would end up being a really, really important card in multiple formats, and Mirage Mirror has the ability to do that too. So it wouldn't surprise me if, you know, this is already like $3 or more on TCG Player. So it wouldn't surprise me if a couple of years from now it at least doubled in price, or maybe even more. Because again, EDH players in general just freaking love this card. So I would keep it in my trade binder too. I think that this is probably going to gain some value over the next few years. Now, my number 9 is Whir of Invention, and another trend that you might start noticing, especially as we move down the list here, is that a lot of the cards on the list either are artifacts or they deal with artifacts in some way or another, you know. And there's multiple reasons for that. Obviously, a whole block that revolves around artifacts is rotating out of Standard, so a lot of the cards that I have to choose from are artifacts and stuff. But there's also the fact, and more importantly here, that artifacts can be played in any deck. So, you know, Commander and EDH players really, really love not only artifacts, but cards that work with artifacts. And Whir of Invention is one of the best in the entire format that's about to rotate out. You know, tutors are already good in Commander. So in singleton formats, tutors are amazing, especially tutors that put the card right onto the battlefield. And this tutor could feasibly only cost you 3 mana to go get whatever artifact you wanted, depending on what your board state is like. So Whir of Invention is not going to get any less popular anytime soon, and especially once it becomes, you know, way less available. I imagine it's going to go up in value over the next couple of years because it's still going to be a very played Commander card. It already is a very played Commander card. So again, once it becomes unavailable, I can only imagine it goes up. Now my number 8 is Fraying Sanity. Now, of all of the cards on the list, this is the one that the casual player argument applies to the most. But again, casual players are a huge part of the market, and they're what's keeping Fraying Sanity at like $3 right now, even though it's never played. It's not played in like anything that ever actually mattered in Standard, sadly, because the card is obviously ridiculous. But casual players love mill, and casual players love this card because it's one of the better looking mill pieces. ever printed. Double up your mill and it works with itself, if you get multiple copies. So this is just a ridiculous card that casual players are going to love until the end of time. Like, for instance, if you don't believe me, Sphinx's Tutelage is a random uncommon from Magic Origins that has to deal with mill. And right now it is like $2.50 or $3. And it's just a random uncommon. All the other random uncommons from Magic Origins are like 5 cents right now. Some of them are a penny. But because Sphinx's Tutelage is an awesome casual mill card, it gets to be $3, and it's just an uncommon. Frank's Sanity is a rare, so you can only imagine the ceiling on this just 3 or 4 years from now if it doesn't get reprinted in a Master's set or something, and I kind of doubt that it will in some ways. If this doesn't see a reprint, this could get way over the moon in just the next few years because casual players will never not like this card. Now up next is Bombat Courier, or Bombat Courier. I've always called it Bombat Courier, but there's always someone who's like, you said Bombat. I don't care. It's phonetically, it looks like Bombat to me. But in any case, I'm not going to get to talk about the card too much more before it rotates out, but I've probably already talked enough about it in the standard. We are all sick of Bombat Courier at this point. It's been in lots and lots of different decks. But there's a reason for that. It's one of the best Raging Goblins of all time. Like, next to Monastery Swiftspear, this probably is the best Raging Goblin of all time, and that's not going to change just because it rotates out of standard. It works in artifact strategies, it works in, aggro strategies, and there are plenty of crossover. Let's just put it that way. Between artifacts and aggro strategies in older formats like Modern and Legacy. And this is already in a couple of Modern decks. Some Affinity players will run this, and it's in the Modern Vengevine deck as just a 2 of, So I could definitely see this going places once it rotates out of standard, and again, just becomes unavailable because the card is very good and could be good outside of standard and is in fact already being played outside of standard. So I might keep this for a little while and just see what it does. Now, my number 6 is Paradox Engine, and this was an easy one, even though it's never really shown up in standard in any impactful deck, even though it should have. Look at what this stupid card does, But in a format with a braid, you can't play 5-mana artifacts so your entire deck is based around. So we never really got to see it in standard. But the card is unbelievable, and it's already actually $20 or more. In some cases on TCG Player, there are some sellers trying to get like $28 for this card, and that's because it's unbelievably popular in, EDH for the most part. This is an insanely popular commander piece that will not be any less popular once it rotates. I've already said this about a few cards, but Paradox Engine might be the one that it applies to the most, if only because it's already going for so freaking much. I hope that you didn't ever pull a Paradox Engine out of a pack and be like, oh, this isn't good in standard. Was it like $2-3? Because no, it's worth, 10 times what you might have thought it was worth. Until researching for this video, I had no idea Paradox Engine was above $20 at this point, but it is, and that's mostly because of commander play. And again, that's not going to change anytime soon. But we'll kick off the top 5 of the card that you knew had to be on the list somewhere, and that's Fatal Push. Keep this thing. I know that it's gotten down to like $4 at this point, but it's still really, really heavily played in formats like Modern, and even Legacy decks will play a few copies of Fatal Push because it is just that good, even more so in older formats that tend to focus more around 1- and 2-drop creatures. The best 1- and 2-drop creatures in the history of Magic are played in these formats, and Fatal Push is obviously really, really good against them. And I don't see it getting reprinted anytime soon. They could reprint this in a Masters set, and they probably will at some point. It would surprise me if they didn't, but it's not getting reprinted in a standard legal set that people actually open anytime soon because they'd have to bring back the revolt mechanic to actually reprint this, and that probably won't happen for a good long time. So this card will probably only go up in value as it becomes less and less available, but it's still seeing lots of play in older formats. Path to Exile is a good example of a 1-mana removal piece at uncommon that has stayed relatively tough to get, relatively scarce over its life cycle, and I think Fatal Push will follow that trend. But number 4 is Birol. Keep this thing. This is really, really good, not only for Commander. This is the only other legendary creature on the entire list besides Shram, but you keep this for Commander. Yeah, it's a great general and all that, but this is already played in Modern Storm, which doesn't look like it's really going anywhere anytime soon, and it's even seeing some play in the Legacy format. Birol, this is probably the only time this is going to see print, again, maybe outside of a Master set or a Masterpiece theme. in a given set, but it's not going to be super common to pull this card from here on out, and it will probably go up in value because it sees play in multiple decks in older formats, which you can't say about a whole lot of cards that are currently rotating. But we'll kick off the top 3 with another card you could say that about, actually, and that's Scrap Trawler. All the way down here at number 3, you know. This is actually relatively inexpensive if I'm to understand right now. Last time I checked the price of this card, it was really low. It's kind of a steal what you can get this card at. You know, it's been in multiple fun standard decks. It's been in versions of the Paradoxical Outcome deck, but again, just like some of the other cards on the list, this is seeing play in older formats too, and that's really important when it comes to judging what a card's going to do value-wise once it rotates. You know, this is a 4 of in the Ironworks deck in Modern, which is really important. That deck is getting more and more popular, fun to play, doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. People have tried to sideboard it out of the format, and it hasn't happened yet, so Ironworks is still a very strong deck, and once this card becomes less available, it could probably skyrocket value-wise. But there's also the Legacy Grinding Station deck that this is a 4 of in, and good lord does that deck look awesome. And it gives us reason to keep a few other cards, by the way. Like, it gives us reason to keep Inventor's Fair. There's probably more reasons outside of that deck just to keep Inventor's Fair. Inventor's Fair is ridiculous. Should probably keep that card too. But even like Sly Requisitioner, which doesn't look like much, is in the Legacy Grinding Station deck as a key piece. So that deck actually gives us multiple reasons to keep multiple cards, but Scrap Trawler is the one that made the list because not only is it in Legacy Grinding Station, which it can't be overstated how amazing that deck looks. But Google it, it's dumb. But in any case, it's also in a very popular Modern deck and is really breakable looking outside of just a couple of decks it's in older formats. So I would definitely keep this around because right now it may only be, you know, a couple of quarters to own one of these, but it's probably going to shoot up relatively soon. But we're almost there. Number 2 is Hollow One, and this one is super obvious as far as I'm concerned. You know, this is the centerpiece. As a matter of fact, the name of the deck is Hollow One. It's the centerpiece of one of the most important decks in Modern right now. I would say this is in the top 5, if not the top 3 decks currently in the Modern format, and again, doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon, and Hollow One is entirely unfair in that deck. Again, the deck is named after this card. So that's pretty much all I really have to say about it. There's a lot of speculation to be done on a lot of these cards, but I just think that Hollow One is a no-brainer on all accounts just because, again, doesn't look like that deck is going to die anytime soon, and it's one of the best decks in Modern, so keep this in your binder. But number 1, we finally reached it. Walking Ballista. I hate to say it. I know that everyone's so tired of this card. At least if my comment section is anything to be believed. This is one of the cards that people want to rotate the most, but I don't think you're going to be done seeing it just because it rotates out of Standard, depending on what other formats you play. This probably sees more play in other formats than just about any card rotating out of Standard, if you didn't know. It goes into a bunch of different Modern decks. You know, it goes into Modern Tron. It goes into the Bridgevine deck that just popped up in Modern and everyone's talking about. It's in that deck as well, you know. It's also in some Modern Affinity builds. It's a 4 of in Legacy Affinity. And if that weren't enough, this is a very important EDH piece for a lot of players. You know, any deck can play it. It gives decks that don't have access to removal a good removal piece. It allows you to just blow somebody out of the game on like turn 12 in Commander, you know. If there's nothing else to do, it's a great mana sink that can just like put counters on itself for the whole game until somebody deals with it. And then even if somebody deals with it, you just pull all the counters off of it, kill your 2 dudes and deal 4 to you. Like, it's just, Walking Ballista is a beast in Commander, and that's not going to change. But it's also, you know, it's not going to change that this card is popular in actual competitive constructed formats outside of Standard. Again, I named like 3 Modern decks it's in and a couple of Legacy decks too. So this card is going nowhere, and it's already $15-20 on TCG Player. And again, that's probably going to go north. Expect this to dip a little bit, just like most of these cards will after rotation, because there's going to be this mass sell-off. You know, and when there's a mass sell-off of cards that just go into the buy list, then, you know, the cards are going to dip in value. But that being said, with most of the cards on the list, and especially Walking Ballista, give it a little bit of time, and within a couple of years, this will be right back up there. I don't think you'll lose too much investment on your Walking Ballista, because just like 3-4 years from now, especially if this doesn't get a reprint in a Master set, it's going to be ludicrous how much this card costs. So keep them in your binder. That's my list. pretty much all I got to talk about for now. And I know you probably are surprised by some of the stuff that didn't make the list. You know, Scarab God, Chandra, all that, you know. But I think those are a little bit too expensive for older formats, you know, and they haven't really done too much in EDH. There are better options for a commander than the Scarab God if you're trying to do this. And Chandra, maybe, but I imagine she'll dip in value and stay that way after rotation. So those are just some thoughts. If there's anything else that you don't know why I didn't make the list, make sure you let me know down there. I always miss something ridiculous. So make sure that you tell me how dumb I am for missing whatever down there in the comments section. And while you're at it, make sure you do the other YouTube stuff. It would really help me out a lot if you click the first link in the description and go over to TCG Player. They help sponsor my content, and they love it when people click on that link. You know, go over there, check out their wares, order Commander 2018, order any of the cards that you saw on the list. If you want to do some investing, some speculation, you can do that. You know, you can order some stuff from Guilds of Ravnica at this point, you know, pre-ordered booster boxes and stuff. So get into that, just look at the link. Again, just clicking it helps me out. Or you could just click the thumbs up button, like the video, put me in more recommended feeds, share the video. That really, really helps if you share it around. This is information that I think people need to be privy to, whether I'm right or wrong. You know, they need to be able to judge for themselves. So share the video around and do all the other stuff. Follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev. Throw $1 in the Patreon if you like what I do and you enjoy my face. Or if you don't like my face but you like what I do. You know, throw $1 at me on patreon.com/SBMTG. Link in the description for that. And, of course, subscribe if you haven't done that yet either, because we're trying to hit 100,000 and we're so close. So every little bit counts. Get me to 100,000. I want that play button. But aside from that, I'm pretty sure I'm done for now. I'll catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.